Hi, everybody. Welcome to Sleep Wave. This is Jessica. This week we have sort of an unconventional episode, and I'm going to be speaking to my co host, Karissa Vacker. Good morning, Karissa.
Good morning, Jessica, and hi, everybody.
And we're going to be doing an episode today where we just talk so you get to know us a little better as people. And we get to know each other better because the big secret is that Carissa and I don't do Sleepwave from the same room or studio or even city. And in fact, we've never met
In
in
fact, we've
person. We've
never
only
met in
met over the
person.
phone. Yeah, yeah. But we have met over the phone and we have oddly some very beloved friends in common. And so
It's
I
true.
think that made us bond much more quickly than we might have otherwise because the people we have in common are fantastic. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, we thought we'd get to know each other a little better today so the listeners can get to know us better. Um, I want to ask you a question, Carissa. It's kind of a big one, but
Yes. Okay,
what do
I'm ready.
you enjoy most about making Sleepwave?
Oh, man. I think the biggest thing is that it feels like we're really helping people. And, it's like you always want to feel like when you grow up, you're going to do something that's going to make a difference in some way. You know what I mean? And like I felt for many years in my life, like,
Yeah.
what am I doing with my life? And this
Mm.
has been such an incredibly rewarding experience just to hear from the listeners. And we get messages all the time from people that say in such incredible detail how it's helping them. And like it
Mhm.
makes me feel a little emotional because I feel like what an incredible gift that we get to do this and share this with people. So that is absolutely my favorite thing about it. What about you?
You know, I think there's so many levels on which it's just a cool job to do. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I enjoy the writing of it, the creating of it, I enjoy the recording of it. But I gotta agree with you that it like exercises a part of me potentially, well, not potentially, like globally. We're hearing from people all over the place. I mean, I've gotten feedback from India, Sweden, Thailand, and to just feel like this little simple thing is spreading and has, I mean, I didn't grow up with issues around sleep. I've always been a pretty good sleeper, and it wasn't until I did Sleepwave that I really, really got how debilitating it can be for people who have chronic sleep issues. And so it wasn't just delivering something that works, it was the magnitude of what sleep does. And I kind of backed into this and it was like, oh, sleep. Yeah, I'm good at helping people sleep. But when you hear from so many people that, suddenly they're in a good mood, their relationships with their children improve, their work improves, and I just thought, wow, this is as big as food. This is as big as exercise. And I feel profoundly useful in the economy of nature to be doing this. And that, I don't know that there's much that's more satisfying than that. So I'm also really grateful, I got to say, to the producers for having asked us to do this, because I wouldn't have thought it up. And yeah, so same answer, slightly different words.
Agreed with everything you said as well. And we have a few
So,
questions. Oh, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, I just want to get a little background on both of us. Like, you tell me how
Yeah.
you got to voiceover work, like what you've done in this realm.
Yeah. So I have been a pretty much full-time voiceover actor for how many years now? Probably 8, maybe. And I got here. I studied theater in college. I have my BFA in acting. And then I was a professional theater actor for many years. And then I was in LA and I started working in film and TV, did that. And while I was in the midst of that, a very good friend of mine said, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing audiobooks?" And I was like, "What are audiobooks?" Because I think this was, I don't know, 2013, and
Hmm.
audiobooks were not what they are today. And so I was like, "I'm intrigued. Tell me more. I love to read." And so she kind of introduced me to somebody who introduced me to somebody else. And I started recording audiobooks. It's a very simplified version of a much longer story. But so that was really my first foray into voice work. And now I record um, a lot, maybe 100 audiobooks a year. It's kind of silly. I do it
Wow.
very much full time. Yeah, so it's a lot, but it's a great job. And then since then, other voice work has popped up out of that as well. And so voice work is pretty much my full-time gig at this point. Uh, it is not pretty much, it is. So it's great, and I love it. And then the meditation and the work that I get to do with Sleepwave is just such an incredible complement to that, because I've always loved, for many, many years, done yoga and meditation. And so to get to share that part of myself um, is like one of my favorite things that I do. Absolutely. So great. And I know you do a lot of very interesting jobs too. Please give me the background about all the other things you do and also how that brought you here.
Oh man, I'm a weirdo. I started an actress as well. I went to graduate school in acting at NYU, but then I dropped out after a year. I was like, I don't want to pretend to be other people anymore. And I was really getting into stuff like the macrobiotic diet, which is a long story, but it's a very healthy diet. And I was recovering from an eating disorder, and I was just learning about myself for the first time in my life in a way that was powerful and committed and fruitful. And I suddenly realized, like, I don't want to pretend to be other people. So I left grad school and I went and traveled and got way into macrobiotic cooking and became a teacher of sorts. And then I became a traveling chef. And then I wrote a book. And the book just came to me like, I don't even read books. I mean, I do. It's not like I can't read, but I'm not a huge reader. And suddenly my intuition one day was like, write a book. And I just thought, that's the most absurd thing I've ever heard. Let's just file that away as delusion. And it just kept coming back and coming back and coming back and saying, write a book, write a book, write a book. And it was really alarming. And I was eating such healthy food and meditating regularly that, getting a signal like that kept repeating itself was, it was very real. And so finally, after a year, I sat down on my computer and was like, okay, if I'm supposed to write a book, I'm supposed to write a book. And it was called The Hip Chick's Guide to Macrobiotics, and it came out in 2004. And that led to like
That's
writing.
you? I've seen this book.
That's me.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. That's so funny.
Shut up.
That's so funny.
Oh my God.
That,
Okay. I'm starstruck. Okay. This is awesome. Look
that
at
is
this.
so funny. So
Jessica
yeah, it
Vacker,
was,
people. Oh my goodness.
that book has done really well because I was basically bastardizing someone else's ideas, and the ideas themselves are very powerful, and I was just giving it this modern spin, and it's a Taoism, and it's deep, and it's practical, and I made it funny. So that led to other things, like I wrote a book with Alicia Silverstone called The Kind Diet. I've written books with several celebrities. And so that's been my sort of background career. And but I grew up as a teenager, I did radio. I grew up in Canada and I did national radio. I like slipped into this little gig on this national show on the CBC when I was 14. And so I've been behind a microphone like more in my life than most people. And then I did a radio show in Portland, Maine. So just, I don't know, groovy stuff and my voice have done this. And in 1999, I became a hypnotherapist and did a lot of hypnosis for childbirth, hypnosis for actors. I created a whole thing called Hypnosis for Actors, and then had a private practice practice in the background, steadily for a number of years. And it wasn't until our friend Ronnie Butler recommended me to the people at Sleepiest, which is our producers, and I started recording on Sleepiest. And then it became like, wow, I can help people fall asleep, which I hadn't. I mean, I'd worked with some people with insomnia, but never as a specialty. And I
Yeah.
do stand-up comedy. That's the other thing. That's like the when I
Yes.
say I'm a weirdo, it's the cherry on the sundae is that I do stand-up.
And I love
It's
that because
absurd and insane.
it's so great. I obviously follow you on Instagram, and so I've seen, little things you post, and I also I love that. I love that you do this great like hippie stuff and the stand up comedy is great. So tell me how you decided one day, because I feel like stand up comedy would be like the most terrifying thing one could ever ask me to do. So how did you say like, yes, I want to do this?
Well, I find I've done a lot of different performing, as I'm sure you have too. You're an actress. You've
Mm,
been on stage. You've said other people's words. I'm sure you've given speeches and, riffed in many ways. I find improv the scariest thing on earth. Like to go on, I mean, at
sure.
least with stand up, you know what you're going to say. I mean, you don't know every single minute. Like you can get on stage and someone's wearing a weird sweater and you're like, oh my God, you win the sweater award. And, go from there. But you do have a script if things meaning your jokes. But improv for me, where you're like have to develop a narrative in the moment, I found that practically impossible. Um, but stand up, I took a stand up class in Portland, Maine, like in 2001, which I really loved. But then I remember saying to myself, like, I don't want to spend the rest of my life in smoky bars with 27-year-old guys talking about their private parts. And now,
That's fair.
20 years later, I'm like, why not spend the rest of my life in smoky bars with 27-year-old guys talking about their private parts? It just, it was something that I tried earlier and it didn't fit my life. And then as I got older, I was like, oh, this could be super fun. And it is. And the world has gotten weird in that time too, in a way where
Mhm.
in society, we're kind of clamping down on each other's minds a bit and language. I mean, there's pressure coming in, and the one place that you can
Mhm.
really push back against that pressure and just be like, don't pressure me, man. I'm a comic. I can say whatever I want. I mean, I don't mean like you say stupid things, but you get to push back and make fun of it and, sort of poke at the shadow is stand up. So I've
Mhm.
sort of re-fallen into it at a time when it feels very necessary and therapeutic and freeing. And yeah, I love
Wow.
doing it. I
Such
mean, I'm
freedom
kind of
in that.
naughty on stage.
Wonderful.
Say that again.
As well you should be. I said such freedom in that initially, to be able to have that, like, look, I'm just saying the truth right now.
Mhm,
Uh
mhm.
in stand up. I love that about stand up. And I also love that you're naughty on stage, because why wouldn't you be? That sounds fun.
Well, I feel like my sleepwave persona and my stand-up persona potentially will
Hmm.
clash. Like I think one of my fears is that sleepwave listeners will be like, "Oh God, I can't deal with her stand-up." But I feel like hopefully I would just say to the sleepwave fans, like, just listen to me on sleep. Just go to sleep with me. You don't need to watch me on a stage. But
Right.
I think there will be significant overlap just because I'm not mean on stage. I'm just naughty.
Yeah.
And,
Well, I sometimes feel like that too, Jessica, because the majority of audiobooks that I record are thrillers, and like like murder mysteries, and like stuff that are like supposed to get your heart racing. And then this other part of
wow.
my job is like, take it on down. Uh so that's also a funny thing for me, because I spend a large portion of my life in this room, and uh, so I'll be here all day. I'll be recording, let's say, a thriller very often, and and then I need to pop over and record a meditation for the podcast. And so I have to do a very like clear moment of like, okay, we're going to this level. And I realize that I can't actually often record the podcast before the book, because then I'll start a thriller like, and so she was walking through the woods. It's the wrong
And
tone.
he
Wrong
stabbed
tone.
her. Yeah.
He
Wow.
stabbed her
Interesting.
multiple times.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's
Yes,
kind.
yes.
It's different. It's different. I hear what you're saying, but I sometimes have that thought too. I'm like, oh, if people, you know, realize I do both or listen to both, they might be like, oh, what? This is weird. This is not soothing at
Right,
all.
right, right.
Yeah.
Who is this person?
Oh,
Wow, I
who
love
even
that.
is this person? Yes. So, how do you get your
Um,
ideas for your episodes? Because we have to, we do a lot of them every week. So, where does your inspiration come from?
I'm amazed we've done as many as we have, you know? I mean, I think
Isn't
my
it
biggest
crazy?
fear beginning was that I would run out of ideas. And then I realized one day, I was like, the universe is completely abundant. Like there's constant energy moving in every direction. So just
Mm,
open to it. And there's, I hope, like a jillion ways to invite people to relax. And
oh
that's all
yeah.
it is. I'm just inviting
Mm,
people to relax. So you could focus on a bunny rabbit, think about your favorite place, meditate on a plant, imagine a sculpture. I mean, now I'm hoping even those things won't run out. I trust as well that we will repeat themes at certain points because that's okay. Like this is not about doing this is helping individuals almost in the moment, meaning we're not doing it live, but it's close to live, relax. That's the
yeah.
point. But in terms of inspiration, I just try and stay awake. Funnily enough, pardon the pun, just stay awake
Mm,
to the things that soften me or delight me or make me feel connected to myself. And doing Sleepwave has actually been great because it's almost like this room in my mind has been opened up that's constantly looking for, episode ideas. And it hasn't failed me yet. What
mm.
about you? How do you stay inspired?
It's very similar. Just like you said, you stay awake to what makes you feel better, what kind of comes in. I do the same thing. So my life right now is in a probably one of the most stressful places it's been, just because I'm a mom and I work full time, and I've got my hands are really full. I'm grateful for all how full they are, but I spent 10, 15 years of my life really just like meditating half the day and doing yoga the other half, and like so I spent a lot of time practicing these things before I really needed them. If I like, I needed them. I
I
needed them for
totally
other
get it.
reasons. But you know what I'm saying? Now I
Hmm.
need them in a different way. Like now I can't sit and meditate. Like it's like hilarious, the thought of like meditating for 2 hours like makes me go have a good laugh. But because these things, I had the opportunity to have them so deeply ingrained for such a long period of time. Now, when I'm rocking my son to sleep at night, I'm able to drop into meditation. So for those 10, 15 minutes, that's my time. Or um, super early in the morning or super late at night, or like really like here in the booth when I'm recording a meditation and we have those stretches of silence, I am right there with the listeners, like dropping in. So all that's to say, because my life is really full, and I am aware, I'm listening to all the things that make me feel better. So when I'm anxious, when stuff's going off the rails, whatever it may be, um, I feel like I'm just listening in a different way to like, okay, what do I need that's gonna reground me right now? And then I just have to hope and trust that that thing, it goes beyond me, is bigger than me, and that there's somebody out there that is going through something similar, and is going to need to hear that same thing that like I'm getting from somewhere. I'm getting a download on, and my intuition is telling me. So that's that's kind of it. It's very based on like, often is based on what's happening in my life that week. Um, and as far as repeating themes, there have definitely been, I co-write this with my husband, Billy, as you know. And so there's often times that we're talking about an episode and we say like, oh, have we done this before? We're like, probably. And we need to kind of like spin it in a different way. But the reason these themes come up again is because they're big themes that like I need to keep rehearing. And again, I have to trust that the listeners do too. They're things that like we can hold on to for a minute and then our brains are like, you move on to the other stuff of life. And then sometimes you need to circle back and hear it again.
Oh my God, what a beautiful answer. It's so true. I really relate to that. I really relate to that. And you've just given me permission, to step into some of the repetition because it is, I mean, I had to learn how to cook brown rice from like 50 different teachers. You know what I mean? And it was always instructive to watch someone else do it, to see it again. I mean, the most important things in life require repetition. It's not just like, you repeated yourself, but I guess that's okay. It's no, we want to groove like these deep neural pathways, and we're retraining ourselves to live from this deeper place. And I couldn't relate more to, I mean, I spent my 20s eating brown rice, meditating. Like I took vacations at ashrams. That was where I had, where do you go for fun? What disco do you go to? Oh, Kripalu, you know? So I really get that. And it was weird. It was like being an old soul and doing some of the things that people naturally are attracted to as they get older and crave peace and slow down as a very young person. And it was kind of odd. I mean, I was not doing what normal people were doing, but here it is sort of paying off. And I too am so grateful for those tools that they're like deeply etched. So they're not so unfamiliar. Well, let's go to a simple one. What's the meaning of life?
This old gem. Um, what is the meaning of life? Well, wouldn't it be nice if it was to have fun? And then another part of my brain says, oh, we're here to learn. And then another part's like, oh, we're here to figure out what's important, which always circles back to, for me, the people that I love. It's like health and the people that I love are always the things that are the most important. That's a very non-answer, but those are the things that are coming right now. Fun, what did I say? Fun, learning, what's important, are things at least that bring meaning to my life. How about that? People I love, yeah. What about you? Wow, what is the meaning of life? Tell me.
I know it's such a big question. I mean, for everybody.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know that connectedness and allowing the energy that we've been given as people that runs through our bodies, allowing it to be free and express itself and connect with its cousins energetically, meaning like we're part of a greater whole. And to open that and connect, I think, is one of the things that nature wants to do through us. Checking the hair.
Yeah.
And
looking good.
I'm always more and more, the older I get and the sort of cleaner I get energetically, meaning the more I release myself of my crappy stuff, the more I marvel at the truth that we are spinning on a ball in space. Like, this is so random that a species made it to this place, that you and I have the technology to do this, that we have language, that you and I have, as women, have been liberated enough to have careers and resources and choices. I mean, it's just a mind blow that this is happening. So attributing meaning to it is difficult for me to do because I think the fact of it is just so absurdly, ridiculously miraculous. Um, I'm the older I get, the more optimistic I get in many ways because I see human beings like
Mm.
no matter the degree of our problems with one another, we've managed to go from Adam and Eve type numbers. I mean, not exactly two, possibly, but you know what I mean? Like, depending on your belief system, but
Yeah,
like
yeah.
tiny amounts of humans to almost 8 billion. Now, that may be problematic ultimately when it comes to resources on the planet, but the point is, we have relatively peacefully, more peacefully than acrimoniously, gotten here. Because if it had been more acrimonious and peaceful, we wouldn't have gotten here. So there's something very deeply connected and social and bonded and cooperative about human beings. And yeah, we have our issues. And yeah, there's a psychopath every once in a while. And yes, when resources get scarce, we become protective. But
Mm.
in the aggregate, we come together. And that trips me out. But the more and more I think about human beings, I think like we're like this, with all respect to bacteria, but almost like a bacteria on a planet, and we are doing our best to survive. And love is the glue that keeps us
Hmm.
healthy and together. So I would say without love, we're kind of screwed.
Yeah, I
But
think
I
it's
think
kind
that's
of
endemic. I
that
think it's kind of what?
that it's love, as you said, and it's connection between people. And I think it's realizing that we have more in common than we don't, ultimately. I
I mean, the ego doesn't want to know that. The ego wants to
don't
be
know.
special. The ego wants to be different. But if you were to like actually enumerate all the levels on which like blood, spleen, liver, pancreas, eyeballs, nose, lips, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, look, we're practically the same person when you look at all the things that are the same.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think whenever I feel a lot of, uh, I don't know, I feel very different from someone else, or, I feel like we're clashing in some ways, that is something that I go back to is like, you know what? This person and I actually probably have more in common than we don't, ultimately, in a deeper way. And that helps me
Hmm.
like be like, oh, okay. Just helps me like change my perspective. I'll say that.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
so yeah, maybe realizing that. Maybe we just uncovered the meaning of life today. Wow.
Woo woo! Sleep wave. Woo
We
woo!
did it. We're done. Awesome. Oh my goodness. There's so
So,
many.
do you ever do you ever burp in the booth?
Yes. Yeah. So, as I said, I'm in here all day long by myself, and I have many a beverage in here because when you talk all day, you need it. And so, yes, yes, I do. I gotta say, I'm very grateful that most of the time I'm recording by myself, so I can just stop my recording and do what needs to be done and party on. Um, but when I'm working with other people, I tend to keep it under wraps. What about you? Because you record not at home. You record in studios. So you're, as I did in LA. I also just went to studios. I didn't have a home booth before I moved, so I was also working with other people all the time, and I had to like keep that in. So how are you liking
I
recording in
know.
studio?
It's great. I really like the people that I rent a booth from and the engineer that I generally work with, but I didn't realize how gurgly my stomach was. I didn't realize how much gas I had until I had to record all the time because then you're just like, excuse me, one moment, and go. And it's really weird. It's like we have a lot going on that
Yeah.
makes noise. But in regular life, like the average person standing across from you is not going to hear most of it. But when there's a mic right here, it picks up everything. But I have a
Everything.
trick.
We Tell me.
The trick is when you're drinking water to like really make sure you get no air. Like you drink like
All right.
create like a whole vacuum so you're not drinking any bubbles because those bubbles, that's the problem. In fact,
Gonna get
I
you.
hate to say it, but like, yeah, farting is also about the bubbles coming in through the top. Like when we eat, we ingest
And
a ton
got to
of
go
air.
somewhere.
Eh, Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So
Got to go
note to the
somewhere. Well, it's a
listeners.
very, very common audiobook, at least narrator trick. In every studio I was ever in, they provide you a pillow to put on your stomach because no matter what's going on, if it's hunger rumbles or anything else, the pillow. So bring a quiet pillow. A quiet pillow is key, because some are like crunchy, and just put it on your stomach, and it just kind of mutes everything because it is crazy being in the booth because you are under, the microscope is almost the microphone is almost like a microscope, and
Yeah.
in the sense that like any little noise that you never even realized your throat makes, or I don't know, it's crazy. Our bodies are loud.
I
That's what
just
I've
did it
learned
right
from
now.
this
I just
job.
burped right now. That is a fantastic tip.
There you go. Hot
Seriously,
tip for
you
you.
just saved me
Yeah.
like stress, time, and money even because I rent a booth. It's like, whoa, just saved $10 in stomach gurgle time.
Yes, you did. Yes, I know. I will not record in studio without a pillow. I'm like, we need to
Wow.
go out and find a couch throw pillow. Let's do this.
Yeah,
Because it saves so much
yeah,
time. Yeah. Weird
totally.
tidbit for the listeners, but
Totally.
yeah. I do want to know. So I know you've lived this very awesome hippie life, but what brought you specifically to hypnosis, and what do you, yeah, start there. I feel like I have more questions on that, but
Um, well, I didn't grow up in a groovy hippie life. I grew up in, downtown Toronto, um,
mm.
sort of you know, Protestant work ethic. Nice people. Canadians are nice. I mean, the nice is
Mm.
real in Canada. Um, but I grew up, eating TV dinners, and the local Baskin Robbins asked me if I wanted to work there when I was 11 because I came so often. I was there like every day, and I was like, I'm only 11, and they said, "Oh, okay, a little too
Can't do
early."
it. Yeah.
Um, so there wasn't much that was truly hippie about that, except that I was born in the 60s and this was the early 70s. So,
Mm.
um, but I started smoking when I was 14, and my mother had
Mm.
been a big smoker. She smoked like for 35 years. And at 14, I started smoking, and boom, I had an addictive personality and I was in. And by the time I was about 16, I was smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. And I spent 6 years smoking. I loved it. I was glamorous. I knew how to like blow the smoke above your head. And it was a time when you could smoke in movie theaters and on the subway in London and on the backs of airplanes. I mean, smoking, we've come a long way. When I was 19, I was in college, and my mother went to a group hypnosis session with my uncle, and they quit like that. And I was stunned because I had seen my mother struggle with quitting, and I had struggled with quitting. I mean, I tried. And so after witnessing her release from it, I said, can I use hypnosis? And she set up an appointment for me with a hypnotherapist in Toronto. In August of 1987, I quit smoking. And I remember that day like it was yesterday, and it was a game changer. So my hypnotherapist gave me this tape, and I listened to the tape for about 9 months, and it really changed like who I was. It was this profound set of suggestions about self-esteem and feeling calm and peaceful, and it altered me in many positive ways. And then after 9 months, I lost the tape. I just literally lost it. And I got into macrobiotics. And then when I was on a cooking job um, in Florida, my partner and I, who were cooking for Roger Waters of Pink Floyd, actually, we were driving back and forth to where he lived every day, twice a day, and we would pass these hypnosis, like there were several, I don't know, at least 2 or 3 on the half-hour drive, these hypnosis like clinics or offices. And I thought, oh, hypnosis, I did hypnosis to quit smoking, and almost like it was a dream. And And I suddenly thought it would be really interesting to train in hypnosis to help our clients, because most of our clients, not in this case, the Roger Waters family, but most clients were people with serious illness, and you're helping them, and they have to change their entire eating life on a dime. And that's very difficult because, your eating habits are
Mhm.
about as basic and instinctual and habitual as it gets. So, we would have clients and they'd have trouble. They'd, want it, have the money to do it, have the resources, and then still wake up in the middle of the night and eating ice cream. And
Mm.
so I thought, I wonder if hypnosis would help our clients. And I went and trained to become a hypnotherapist. And it wasn't actually where I aimed most of my attention as a hypnotherapist. For the first few years, I helped people quit smoking. And then, like I said, I got into hypnosis for childbirth. There was actually something called in hypnobirthing, and I was the voice of hypnobirthing for a
Did
few
it.
years. So, oh, did you? You did
Blowing my mind.
hypnobirthing? Well, I used to be the voice
Yes, I
of
did.
hypnobirthing. That's so funny. That's so funny. And
Gosh.
I taught hypnobirthing all over the world. I brought hypnobirthing to South Africa, which has a 70%
Amazing.
C-section rate. Yeah. So that was a big chapter in my life. I've been to 55 births, including my three nieces, and I missed my nephew. I was out of the country. But anyway, so yeah, hypnosis started with my own problem and then sort of had its own thing. And it's a great tool. Hypnosis is this fabulously effective, almost surgical in its precision tool for releasing blocks. When we talk about trauma
Mm.
these days, and trauma gets, the T word gets thrown around a lot. And, I just want to say, like, trauma is not having feelings. Like, we need to grow and be hurt sometimes to grow. But trauma is an experience that gets locked in the body and starts to play on repeat. And,
Wow.
but hypnotherapy is really good with trauma because the body doesn't want to hold it. The subconscious mind doesn't want
Mm.
to hold it. There's no part of the human being that wants to hang on to something hurting it. So, given the opportunity when you go deep into the subconscious and allow it to release that holding pattern, which is really all it is, albeit sometimes a very scary one, when it is given the opportunity to release it, it will, and it's gone for good. So, it's as we sort of double down in our society on, like, oh, I've got trauma, and you feel this sort of like, sorry, this is how it is now, you have to change your behavior to suit me because I have trauma. And it's like, oh, that's so backwards. Like, you're this beautiful flower that wants to bloom. Like, do everything you can to release the trauma because it's releasable. um so yeah, I love it as a tool. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful tool.
That was an incredible explanation. Wow.
Thank you.
You're just blowing my mind. I tell
What
you what.
I mean, what were the factors in your life that got you on the groovy path? Why were you meditating for half a day? And was it Vipassana? Like, what kind of meditation did you do?
Well, first question. I also did not start on the groovy path. My family was very conservative and traditional, and that is how I grew up. I was very, type A kid and all of those things. And my I have three older sisters. So my oldest sister,
I
she
have three
started on the
sisters
groovy path.
too.
You do? What?
I'm number two,
What?
though, and you're number four. Yeah.
Okay. I'm number four. So, my oldest sister, she's 14 years older than I am. So I would go visit her for summers when I was in high school, college, and she would she was living in California at the time. I was in Texas where I primarily grew up. And so she would take me to like tarot card readers and, stuff that I had certainly not been exposed to before. And but beyond all that, she introduced me to meditation, and at the time she was I'm trying to remember even, she was really interested in Native American spirituality at that time in her life. And so she had various recordings of meditations. And so I remember we would lay on the floor in her apartment, and, I was 14 or whatever, and we'd do these meditations, and I was, loved this sense of like just changing my state of mind, I think, uh, was really interesting to me because, or maybe I was even a little younger. I was in that age. I still have such a soft spot in my heart for kids that are in that like puberty, early tween stage, because that was a rough time in my life. And I think it is in a lot of people's lives. And I really needed whatever. I was like, whatever can make me feel better and ground me, like, give it. And this tool that she introduced me to, meditation, I was like, oh, this is interesting. I like this. So over the years that I would visit her, she would continue to introduce me to stuff that kind of just changed my perspective a little bit from what I already had going in my life. And so yeah, I really just followed her lead. And then right after college, Billy and I went to college together at SMU here in Dallas, and we moved to Chicago for a few years, which was a super magical time of life. And we started practicing yoga just at our little local gym. And I think we did that just because, we both went to school to be actors, and we were like interested in like keeping our instruments supple and whatever. So we're like, yoga, we'll try it. This sounds fun. And we met a teacher there who was phenomenal, who we're still very good friends with. And he's like, the gym is fine. Come to this actual studio. And that place is called Yoga View in Chicago. It's still there. If anybody goes to Chicago, lives in Chicago, you want to go take a yoga class, Yoga View. Um, that place was amazing. The teachers were incredible. And that was where I really learned to meditate and to practice yoga. Uh, and I fell in love with it. It absolutely changed my life. I learned all kind of like breathing techniques that I use all the time still. So it wasn't, I didn't learn, I should say, a formal, like Vipassana, it could be really formal type of meditation. It was the type I learned in that studio was just like, okay, what we're going to do right now is we're going to sit down together for 10, 15, 30 minutes, whatever it was. And we're going to breathe and we're going to listen to our thoughts. And there's going to be a lot of them, and they're going to come in and out. And you just sit here and keep trying to come back to the quiet. And sometimes a mantra would be offered or a breathing practice, but mostly it was just that, watching the mind. And I remember the first time that I sat and did that, maybe the first few times, but I have a very clear memory of sitting there and like instantly wanting to jump up and run out of the room. Like my eyes were closed, everybody else's eyes were closed, but I was like, oh, like the anxiety and the like intent, even though I had meditated before, but not in this way and not with other people, the feelings that it brought up in me were a lot. And I it was something to kind of confront. I was maybe 22 at the time, and I I was like, this is really interesting that I'm having so much trouble just sitting with myself and my thoughts. And so maybe this is something I want to do more of. So this is less uncomfortable. It took me a while to get there, probably. Initially, I was like, oh, I'm uncomfortable. I'm going to leave. But I didn't leave, and I stuck it out. Because I think probably the only reason I didn't leave was like the social pressure of like, it's going to be weird if I leave. And sometimes we need that pressure to do something that's uncomfortable. I certainly did. So I stuck with it, and with that and the yoga, and it was just like a very cool time of my life of just opening my mind to other ways to live life and to tap into this being, who lives in this body, like who am I actually, all of those questions, what is the meaning of life, all of these things that just to sit with has been very powerful. And then Billy actually became a yoga teacher because he was so inspired by this particular studio. And that's kind of how we ended up writing these meditations. I was writing meditations for the Sleepiest app for a little while, which I really loved. But when I was pregnant, I realized I'm not going to have the time that I want to have, that I want to give to this to actually do it. And so I talked to Billy about maybe stepping in and doing that because he had taught yoga for many years and meditation. And he just has such incredible ways of phrasing things. And he's done so much deep work and been to India and done all of the retreats. And he's just like, he has such an incredible depth and wealth of knowledge around meditation, that I thought you're going to be a really great asset for this. So it's a cool thing to partner on for sure.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for bringing up Billy because we haven't mentioned him really yet as a total contributor to Sleepwave. Like
Yeah.
I can't listen to myself. Like the one time I've listened to myself doing Sleepwave, I actually needed to go to sleep and I was like, oh God, this is awful. Oh God, this is awful. And then I was asleep. But that was listening to me. But I have listened to a couple of yours and I'm really, first of all, I love your voice. It's like butter. You know what I mean? It's like eating butter, just a stick of butter. And
Thank you.
and someone said it in one of the reviews, and I really love this. Like both of us, I think, have this quality where the work that we've done on ourselves to liberate this being, like you just said, like, who is this being? Because the ego has its story, and then there's the actual being. That Sleepwave has given us the portal to just transmit it, and
Yes.
it's not just words, it's a vibe. So I've listened to your sleep waves and I feel your vibe. And I'm like, oh, I'm being held by Karissa. I'm being, you know what I mean? And that in and of itself is a great gift. But then the words, the meditations, a couple of them I've listened to, and again, it's not anything except A, I'm a good sleeper, and B, it weirds me out to like step into the thing I'm creating, or we're creating.
Same. Yeah.
But fantastic. The meditations are fantastic, like going all these amazing places. And some of them, even just the titles of Billy's writing, have inspired me around, places I can go for writing the hypnosis. So he's very talented, and you guys are like a great team. And I love watching you on Instagram and, your kid. And anyway, so I love that you mentioned him
Aw.
because he's missing here. You know what I mean? There's really three of us.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you for
Doing
saying
the
all of
work.
that. I'm honored. Yeah. He's been an incredible, just, teammate in this. And it's so funny because, yeah, our whole relationship, we've just been like fiercely independent. Like we've really never worked on anything together ever until
Wow.
we had it. I mean, we've been partners for almost 20 years. We've been together. It's crazy.
Wow.
But we
Wow.
have just always been like on our own track, doing you do your thing, I do my thing. We like intersect when we do. We've taken separate vacations. Like our lives have just been
Hmm.
like this and together at the same time. But working on a project like this, which we started doing just as we had a newborn, and that's like a real project together. It was just a really interesting moment in our relationship to be like, oh, now we're partnering in it in like these different ways, and it was just cool to have so much life of our own that now like in growing up together so much that now we can really merge it together. I feel like in work like this in a way that feels really really good. Yeah, and rewarding, as we said at the very beginning. The most rewarding thing about this whole project is just feeling like you step in here, you and I and Billy as he's writing, and like it's a moment to just consciously offer something to the world that you hope helps somebody, um and that feels like, okay, I can go to bed at night feeling like I offered something and hopefully it was good. And like that's a pretty good thing to hope for in a day, I think.
Well said.
Yeah.
One thing I just want to mention, and then I think we have to start talking about the
Yeah.
future,
Winding
um,
down.
is I remember hearing on NPR that there was this study where they asked people to put away their phones and just sit in stillness for
Mm.
10 minutes. May have been 15 minutes, but I'm pretty sure it was 10. It was like a minimal amount of time. And there was a button in front of them. And they asked every participant to press the button beforehand, and the button would deliver a shock. They were wired to feel a shock. And every single person reported that the button, when they tested it, was an unpleasant sensation. So it was understood that, you don't really want to be doing that for fun. It wasn't fun.
Right.
But it was the one thing they were allowed to do in the 10 minutes. 30% of the women pressed the buzzer. It didn't stop the experiment. It just produced stimulation. It was just something to do. And 70% of the men pressed the button. And that's how uncomfortable we are. That's how unfamiliar most people are with sitting with their own thoughts, and how uncomfortable just sitting in their own thoughts makes them. So when you said, on the pillow, I remember taking a meditation retreat where I broke into, like, internally, I did every song I remembered from Evita. I was like, no. I just had to do something.
Yes.
So I loved your story. I love your story. So what?
Yeah. And
go ahead.
oh, I was going to say quickly about that. Like, I feel like a common misconception with meditation is like, you're supposed to get to this point of no thought. And I don't think that's true. I don't think we're wired that way. Our brains want to think. They want to solve problems. So I think it's more about just watching the thoughts, watching the breath, watching the sounds in the room, and being able to bring awareness to your thoughts and awareness to yourself ultimately. Because when you start becoming aware of your thoughts, aware of your environment, aware of your breath, you can do that in other contexts besides sitting quietly on a pillow. When you're in the middle of an argument or a stressful situation or in traffic, whatever. So anyway, for anyone thinking like, I have to get to this no thought place, you don't. That's all I want to say about that.
I remember a meditation teacher saying the great meditators of the world experience like silence mentally for 6 seconds. Like that was a long period of thoughtlessness. And that was so liberating. I was like, 6 seconds, that's nothing. And that was a great meditator. That's a very experienced meditator. And, who knows? We don't have like the, Geiger counter of thoughtlessness, but, the principle of it was important for me to hear, which is don't aim at thoughtlessness. And by the way, you can't aim at it anyway. It's something that just occurs when your brainwave gets slowed down, but your brainwave will never flatline in meditation, like you said, nor really would you want it to.
You wouldn't want it to, no. I want to know, Jessica, what is next for Sleepwave? And you, what's next?
Well, this is interesting, Miss Karissa, youngest of 4. We are going to actually go our separate ways in podcast land. Because we serve, we do different things. And what we've discovered, I was saying the other day to somebody, this has basically been a weird experiment. The producers of the Sleepiest app who helped us create this, none of us knew if this podcast would work. And it really, really worked. But one of the things that we've discovered is that there's some people who are hardcore meditation fans and people who are hardcore hypnosis fans, and lots of people who love both. But what we've decided to do is separate the shows. And I'm going to do my own podcast called Sleep Magic, which is going to start on November 2nd. And you and I will both produce 4 episodes a month. You'll be with Sleepwave, I'll be with Sleep Magic, and 2 bonus episodes per month for subscribers. And so as much as, you and I have created this beautiful thing together, we're now going to create 2 beautiful things side by side. And I just want to encourage listeners to subscribe to both, because you just get that much more. Absolutely. In fact, there'll be more content because there are 2 shows. So that's
exactly. Yes. I know it was when we initially started talking about this, we're like, oh, we don't want to break up, even though, even though, you
Yeah,
know, as you
yeah.
said, you know, we hadn't met in person, but it was our thing. And, but now as we've begun this process, I think it's going to be such a beautiful thing for the listeners to be able to have your hypnosis over at Sleep Magic for 4 to 6 episodes a week, and same with meditation on Sleepwave for 4 to 6 episodes a week, a month, and
A month.
a month. I'll be clear about that. So I just think it's going to end up being really great for everybody, and I'm so excited about how it's going to. I feel like grow what you can do, and you know, grow what I can do with each of our shows. So it should be a fun adventure.
Yeah,
Ready
I
to
think it's
go.
going to give both of us an opportunity to develop in ways that maybe we wouldn't if we were, felt that we were continually serving this entity between us, which has been great. Like, I really think Sleepwave, both of us doing Sleepwave, like gave us both an opportunity to step in because we had one another. I know for me,
Yes.
with like a confidence and a mission, and I'm really grateful for that. But now, as we do our more individual things, it'll be great to see. Like, I mean, because clearly you have a wealth of experience and knowledge, and so does Billy, like things to pull from. And now you can do that with more
Likewise.
individual confidence, and be like, hey, this is my show. This is what we talk about here. And I'll be doing the same thing, like just right next to you. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm super psyched. So November 2nd will be the first Sleep Magic episode. Please subscribe, like press subscribe on your podcast thing, and then you can support both shows and get all the bonus material and just never wake up again.
Excellent sleep
Just be
forever.
asleep for the rest of your life. Yeah.
Oh, amazing, Jessica. Thank you so much for this conversation, and thank you, listeners, for joining us. I knew you were awesome, and I've always thought you were awesome, but I think you're even more incredible now. So this has just been so much fun. So thank you for sitting with me this morning and having this conversation.
Well, right back at you, my friend. It has been a delight, and I'm really looking forward to connecting forever.
Same. We're on it. Thank you so much, listeners.
Yeah.
Whenever you're listening to this, be it morning, noon, or night, we hope you have a wonderful time and sweet dreams tonight.
Yes. Sweet, sweet dreams.